I'm Keith Folse, and I'm here today to talk about two books that I published with the University of Michigan Press. One is a teacher education book on grammar for English language learners, and it's called Keys to Teaching Grammar to English Language Learners. And the other book is a student book, and this is what I have here, which is Clear Grammar Book 1, which is a part of a 4-volume series on the teaching of grammar. Okay? This is a brand new book which has just come out. I've been working on it for a long time. And if you are currently using the Keys book, whether you are an experienced teacher or you're a graduate student or a teacher in training or just reading the book on your own, I'd like to explain why getting this book and working through this book would be a good addition to having the teacher reference book. The Keys book, just to go over it really quickly, the Keys book has 5 chapters. Chapters 1 and 2 basically review the nuts and bolts of English grammar, the 8 parts of speech, what's a direct object, what's a preposition, what's the difference between a conjunction and a preposition, etc. Those are the basic things that all of us are supposed to know. Emphasis on supposed to know. But though that information really, although it's important for teaching ESL, you will not find a chapter in an ESL grammar book called adverbs, and you probably won't find a whole chapter just called conjunctions. And that's because in ESL, we divide those categories up into more meaningful pieces. For example, adverbs of place, adverbs of manner, adverbs of time, not just adverbs. Okay? Chapter 3 of the Keys book is really the meat of the book, and that is 15 key areas of ESL grammar. Things that the average native speaker, I would say probably no native speaker, knows about. For example, what's the difference between count and non-count nouns? Or for that matter, what is a non-count noun and why is it important? In the preposition key, for example, you'll learn the difference between 2 kinds of prepositions. So for example, when you say something like the book is on the table, where you have on, or a better example, sorry, would be the book is in the box. Explain that in. Well, most people are pretty good at that. It's actually inside the box. In really means in. But when you say she excels in math, why not? She excels on math, or by math, or with math. Why not? Well, it's idiomatic in some ways, but some of these prepositions are more lexical in nature, and some of the prepositions are more grammatical in nature. My point is that the 15 points in Chapter 3 really are things that the average native speaker will have no clue about. But you need those 15 things, and that's what I would call the least you should know about ESL grammar. Chapter 4 has 25 hot seat questions, and these are the things, if you've taught a class in your life, you know that you plan for one thing and your students will ask you a very good question, but when that question pops up, many times I have no clue. You know, why is there an ing after the word enjoy? For example, I enjoy playing tennis. Why not to play? Why not play? Why not played? Why not plays? Well, there's a reason for that, and those are those hot seat questions that are explained in Chapter 4. And then Chapter 5 actually has teaching techniques connected to some of the key grammar points presented in the book. When you read that, many of you who are native speakers will have an aha kind of moment. Gee, I never thought about that before. Or if you've taught and you maybe haven't taught for a very long time, what will pop into your head is, yeah, I had a student who asked me that once, or I marked it on a student's paper once and I didn't know how to explain it, so I was hoping that the student wouldn't ask, and luckily he didn't. But if he had asked you, could you explain it? Most people just can't. So that's covered in that book. But what you really need to do is to take a book like Clear Grammar 1, or honestly, you could use any publisher's basic grammar book. This one I recommend obviously because I've written it, I know the material very well, and it's tied to the red book, the Keys book that you already have a copy of. So, for example, when you teach present progressive, you're not sure what present progressive is, a lot of times people ask me, is there a teacher's guide to the book? Well, really, you don't want a teacher's guide. I mean, you might want that for activities, but you don't want a teacher's guide because a teacher's guide is not going to explain present progressive to you. You're supposed to know what that is already. Any more than someone who teaches science and teaching the theory of gravity, for example, there's not there aren't 2 pages in the teacher's book that explains what gravity is. It's assumed that you know what the subject is already. You know the subject matter. So in this case, if you're a little bit weak, a little bit rusty, or a little bit afraid, or just unsure of your grammar for English language learners, what you would do is read the chapter, read the key about teaching present progressive tense. You would turn to Chapter 5 in the Keys book and see if there are any activities or ideas, techniques for teaching that. But what I would do then is go to a student book, such as Clear Grammar 1, and I think that's in Chapter 8 in this volume. And you need to work through this book from page 1 to the end of the book, chapter by chapter. You need to see what grammar is like from a student view. All right, that's really important. Many people who are novice teachers, you don't know the grammar so well, or you're a little bit rusty. You don't know what kind of mistakes Japanese, Spanish, Arabic speakers will make mistakes with. And you don't have a clue yet, maybe, as to, well, if I'm going to practice this, what's the best way to practice this? In other words, if I were going to have to come up with 4 or 5 activities, also known as planning one 50-minute period, if you're going to have to do that, and you will, okay, even if you could find the activities, first you have to know what they look like, but even if you knew what they looked like, and you found them, and you developed them, or you had them in a textbook or from a website, what would the sequencing be for that? The only way to do this is to sort of preempt the class, to plan for the class, and I would do that by going through a learner book, such as Clear Grammar 1, from the very beginning of the chapter until the end. This will let you see not only what inductive and deductive approaches to grammar look like, because in the Clear Grammar book, every single chapter has an inductive explanation or presentation and a deductive presentation. Now, the deductive presentation is pretty basic in the sense of it's just grammar right up on the board. But the inductive approach actually takes a lot more teacher prep time and a lot more class time. It actually takes a lot more thought, a lot more planning. But some students really enjoy that kind of presentation, and for some grammar points it actually might be better than just doing a deductive presentation. I would actually recommend always following up any inductive presentation with a deductive presentation. In other words, let's sort of sum up all of the grammar in a chart on the board, or in Clear Grammar 1. In the Clear Grammar 1 book, you'll find lots of charts and tables and rules of what to say and what not to say, how to use the point, how not to use the point, etc. Again, I think the very best thing you can do is you can go through a teacher preparation book on grammar that's written in language that's accessible for teachers, not an applied linguistics kind of textbook, and not a book that's citing tons of research, which is not what a beginning teacher really needs out there right away. Down the road, yes, it's excellent for you to have icing on the cake, but to build a basic grammar cake, all right, you really need the nuts and bolts, the way it's presented in a book such as Keys to Teaching Grammar to English Language Learners, followed up by using a learner workbook. And I can also sum up by saying, or finish up by saying, that the university where I teach, when I teach the grammar course, I always require the students to buy not 1 but 3 books. We have Keys, the Keys book, the actual grammar book for the teachers. We use the workbook that goes with it, which might seem like minutia or Mickey Mouse activities to some people, but if you're not sure of what a direct object is, the time to get sure is in the protected environment of the graduate class with your professor who knows what he or she is talking about, not while you're standing at the whiteboard, proverbial deer in the headlight kind of approach, all right? And you need to actually go through this combination. Again, the 3rd book would be the Clear Grammar Workbook or some similar student workbook. Thank you very much.